there was a time when new JRPGs felt like rare treasures, and it wasn't because developers weren't making them, it was just that so many of them never actually made it out of Japan. But that is definitely not the case anymore, because there are a lot of cool-looking JRPGs that are actually worth talking about. As always, I'm Daniel, and today, 10 amazing upcoming JRPGs to keep on your radar. So starting off at number 10, we have Octopath Traveler 0. You know, people love to say Square Enix doesn't make real turn-based RPGs anymore, but Team Asano are single-handedly keeping that old-school spirit alive, whether it's Bravely Default or the HD 2D stuff in which they just get. But with Octopath Traveler 0, things are a little different. Technically, it is based on Champions of the Continent, but before you roll your eyes, they are completely stripping out the gacha mechanics. All those microtransactions are gone, and this is being rebuilt as a proper standalone console experience. The premise is actually a prequel to the first game, but the big hook is that for the first time, you aren't just picking one of 8 travelers. You actually get to create your own custom protagonist. So your village gets destroyed right at the start, and a huge part of the game is this new town building mechanic where you restore your home while exploring. Now, it still has that addictive break and boost combat that was very amazing to play, but instead of being locked to a small cast, you can recruit dozens of characters, which, of course, opens up the party variety in a way the mainline games quite never did. Octopath Traveler 0 feels like they're taking a risk here, evolving the formula rather than just giving us the same thing a third time. So if you skip the mobile version because it was on mobile, this is your second chance. It actually has a set release date as of right now, and we hope it's final. The release date is 4th of December 2025, which is in a few days from now.
Octopath Traveler 0 is available on December 4th, 2020.
So next up at number 9 is Sacrifier. Now, if you are someone who grew up worshiping the golden era of PS1 JRPGs, and I'm talking about the heavy hitters like Vagrant Story, then this is basically a love letter written specifically for you. Now, visually, this game is stunning because it uses this 2.5D aesthetic where they've taken really detailed pixel art characters and dropped them into these dynamic 3D environments, and it pops. The premise puts you in the boots of Ezekiel Raiden. You play as Ezekiel, and he starts out as this soldier priest trying to purge demons, but as these things usually go, his faith gets shaken pretty hard by some revelations. Sacrifier is promising a story full of moral complexity, trying to overturn those standard good versus evil tropes we've seen 1,000 times, with a cast that actually feels lovable. The reason I've got this game on my radar is the combat system. It is wild, because this is hybrid of real-time and turn-based action, but the hook is that time only moves when you move, kind of like Super Hot, right? So it creates these really intense moments of decision-making. You're targeting individual body parts, like in Vagrant Story, and the movement reminds me a lot of Valkyrie Profile 2. I know it's faced some delays, which is frustrating, sure, but still, let's all hope they pull this off, because if done right, it could easily be one of the best indie JRPGs out there.
So up at number 8, we have Decapolice. The premise here is something we basically never see, a crime procedural JRPG. It's set in this futuristic, cyberpunkish open world, and you weren't just some random adventurer, because you are in charge of a special investigation team. You're a rookie detective. The gameplay loop sounds fascinating because it's not just about combat. You have to go out, collect evidence, and solve cases. And then when things get heated, you're trying to change the hearts of the criminals to stop them. The detective work and JRPG mechanics kind of sounds perfect. It has all the ingredients to be a masterpiece whenever it finally decides to come out. Now, Decapolice was initially supposed to drop in 2023, then it got pushed to 2024, and now we're officially looking at a 2026 release window. This is from Level 5, and it's shaping up to be a must-play. Once again, it's from Level 5, and they're actually experienced, because they've made massive hits like Ni no Kuni both 1 and 2, which are games that I really had a great time playing. To cut the long story short, Decapolice seems to be in safe hands, and we hope it doesn't get any more major delays. At number 7 is Lost Helden. There are a lot of games that are trying to capture that old school magic, and this is another example. Or maybe this is one that is doing something genuinely different with its presentation. The developers, Artisan Studios, is using this deep 2D stuff, so everything looks hand-painted. The characters, the scenery, it looks very great. It has this jaw-dropping personality that you just don't see in modern hyper-realistic graphics. And I even also found out that the music is by Sakimoto. You know, the legend behind Final Fantasy XII and Tactics. So the atmosphere is already a 10 out of 10, which is of course a good thing to talk about. And just like Sacrifier, the game we talked about a few minutes ago, this is a game where the gameplay is where it gets really innovative, because it's mixing real-time action with turn-based logic in a system they call action and reaction. So you have an action phase where you can just like freely strike the enemy and they take it. But once you run out of steam, you enter the reaction phase. Now the enemy attacks and you have to manually dodge, parry, or counter. This action and reaction, whatever, forces you to actually strategize. You can't just button mash your way to victory. You have to manage the flow of battle. On paper, it sounds like such a cool, refreshing take on the genre. And it's slated for 2026, and I just can't wait to see if it plays as good as it looks. So at number 6, we have Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. The original PS1 version of this game was relentlessly long. I'm talking over 100 hours. You could play for 3 hours before you even fought your first slime, meaning it was a very, very slow burn. But that's also part of its charm, because the premise is that the world is empty, just one island, and you have to find these stone tablet fragments, fit them together like puzzle pieces, and travel back in time to save islands from destruction so they reappear in the present. It's this massive, episodic adventure. Visually, this reimagined version is ditching the sprites for a new diorama-inspired art style. It looks like moving puppets or dolls, which I really don't know if it fits the rebuilding the world vibe perfectly. But the reason you should be excited is the gameplay overhaul. They are finally addressing the pacing. The intro is streamlined so you get into the action way faster. In the original, you had the vocation system, and now you have moonlighting. So this lets you equip a secondary vocation, so you can level up 2 classes at once and mix their abilities. Plus, there's a new getting worked up mechanic, which sounds like the PEP system from Dragon Quest XI or Coup de Grace from 9. It basically gives you ultimate moves based on your class combo. So if you were scared off by the original's reputation for being a 100-hour slog, this looks like it's going to keep the adventure, but, actually respect your time. So that said, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined might just become the definitive way to play the most underrated game in the series. Halfway through at number 5, we have Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. A Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave centers around the heroic games, which is most likely not some friendly tournament. It's like a brutal religious ritual held every century to determine who gets to control the weave. Basically, the tapestry of fate that fate that dictates history. Tapestry of fate that dictates history. The premise is that the weave is fraying, reality is getting unstable, and the winner of these games gets to approach the divine sovereign to rewrite a strand of destiny. The narrative is split between 2 distinct protagonists with opposing goals. First, you have Kai, a gladiator from the slums who is fighting to save his father, someone who has literally been erased from history by the weave. He's the underdog, the people's champion. Then you have Theodora, a highborn tactician who, she doesn't want to change the past, she wants to secure the future for her crumbling empire. Fortune's Weave seems to handle fate in a great way because it sounds like the central conflict. We still don't know if this is a distant prequel to Three Houses or a completely different timeline where she never fell asleep, but the implication that the Divine Sovereign might be a corrupted Sophis really changes everything. Of course, this is shaping up to be a darker, more politically complex drama than Engage, and is exactly the kind of fresh air I feel the series needs. I mean, personally.
Now warm blood is served in a crude cup.
You think I'd let you deny me my feelings?
So what we have at number 4 is Starbites. If you're the type of person who loves seeing mechs and technology mixed into your into your JRPGs, then you need to be paying attention to this one. The premise is set on a planet called Bitter, which honestly is a great name for a post-apocalyptic desert world. But yeah, it takes place after this devastating space war, and the world is basically a wasteland. You play as a girl named Lukita who is trying to survive by scavenging for debris and materials. In terms of the combat, you aren't just fighting with swords. You are piloting and upgrading these massive mechas. It's a traditional turn-based system, but I feel like the customization options for the mechs add this layer of depth that it reminds me of Front Mission, but with a way more vibrant anime aesthetic. Starbites is it's criminal how much this game is flying under the radar because it really looks stylish, it looks fun, and it could be the sleeper hit that nobody saw coming.
Disembodied robot head, a trope I admit to being a sucker for before beating my
At number 3 is The Legend of Heroes: Trails Beyond the Horizon. We've been hearing about the end of Zemuria and the eternal recurrence for years, literally over a decade. Well, in Trails Beyond the Horizon, which is the Western release of Kaino Kaseki, we are finally facing it head-on. The premise picks up right where Daybreak left off. Van Arkwright is back as the Spriggan protagonist. The Republic is launching Project Starshot. They are literally building an orbital rocket to breach the atmosphere and see what is actually outside the planet. Now, this isn't just Van's story. Reen Schwartzer is back. The Onion Knight himself, Kevin Graham, is finally back after being missing in action for like 10 games. Gameplay-wise, it's still the hybrid combat. You can still switch between real-time action and turn-based command battles instantly. You've got Blitz, which gives you these massive stat bonuses and follow-up attacks if you chain your turns right. Plus, there's a new awakening state for certain characters that just lets you completely wreck everything on screen. Contextually, this is the 20th anniversary title. It promises to answer the questions we've had since Sky FC. Who is the Grandmaster? Why does the world map end? What is the primordial nothingness? If you've invested hundreds of hours into this series, you'll definitely know why this is the payoff we have been waiting half our lives for.
Trails Beyond the Horizon, coming fall 2025.
Next up at number 2 is Monster Hunter Stories 3: Twisted Reflection. Monster Hunter has had let's call it an interesting 2025, with Wilds. The reviews were great, but the post-launch support has been turbulent, to say the least. This is the turn-based spin-off that, honestly, sometimes feels like it has more heart than the mainline games. The premise for Twisted Reflection sounds a bit more high stakes than usual. Usually we're just some kid in a village, right? But this time, you step into the role of a prince. The story revolves around 2 kingdoms, 2 legendary dragons, and of course, impending extinction. It feels like they are leaning way harder into the traditional JRPG save the world narrative, rather than just go hunt this big lizard because it's eating our sheep or something. Gameplay-wise, it's keeping that addictive creature collecting loop. You aren't killing the monsters, you're bonding with them because they're your monsties. If you love Pokemon but wish it had better graphics and, actually challenging combat, this is the game. It's colorful, it's charming, and it looks like it's going to set a new gold standard for creature collectors.
Stopped. We got another eviction.
And finally, at number 1 is Yakuza Kiwami 3 and Dark Ties. Now, obviously, this is a massive 2-in-1 package that is launching day and date on the Switch 2, the PS5, and Xbox in early 2026. First, you have Yakuza Kiwami 3. We all know Yakuza 3 is the Blokuza one, right? The combat was rough, and of course, this remake is completely overhauling it, and they are leaning into the Orphanage Simulator memes. Then you've got Dark Ties. This is a brand new standalone spin-off included in the package, and for the first time ever, we are playing as Yoshitaka. The premise is a prequel to Yakuza 3, showing us how he rose from the corporate world to become the clan patriarch. We get to see his bond with Dojima actually form, rather than just being told about it. The combat in Dark Ties is centered entirely around boxing, which makes total sense for him, and it looks visceral. The fact that this was apparently supposed to be just a movie before they decided to make it a full game is kind of crazy. To cut the long story short, just like every other game on this list, this is one, or, well, 2, that you should also keep on your radar. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and also turn on the notification. Lastly, don't forget to drink water and get some sun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.